In the darkest valleys of despair, where corruption festers like a wound, true justice is born not from vengeance but from the courage to protect the innocent and heal the broken. The morning mist clung to Dreaming Creek like a shroud, broken only by the crimson that stained the water where it pooled around the ancient oak. Amelia Carter hung unconscious against the rough bark, her wrists bound with coarse rope that had bitten deep into her flesh during the night. Her calico dress, once pristine blue and white, now bore the brutal testimony of the Grayson gang, this message to her father. Before we jump back in, tell us where you are tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you are subscribed because tomorrow I have saved something extra special for you. Ethan Rawlings emerged from the shadows like a specter, his worn leather boots silent on the damp earth. The stranger, his weathered face revealed nothing as he surveyed the scene, but his steel-gray eyes burned with a cold fire that spoke of old wounds and older debts. 3 of Grayson's men lay sprawled in the dirt, their bodies twisted in the unnatural poses of violent death. "Easy now, miss," Ethan whispered as he cut through the ropes with a knife that gleamed silver in the dawnlight. Amelia, his eyes fluttered open, wide with terror until they met his steady gaze. Something in his expression, perhaps the gentleness that contradicted his hard exterior, allowed her to breathe again. The sound of hoofbeats echoed from the direction of Golden Valley as Doc McDonald arrived with Joshua Carter and half the town trailing behind. The doctor, his practiced hands worked quickly, cleaning wounds while the townspeople whispered among themselves about the mysterious stranger who had appeared like an avenging angel. "Texas Ranger," old Pete whispered, pointing to the precision of the kills. "Seen work like this before, during the Apache troubles." Ethan said nothing, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He mounted his black stallion and rode toward the ridge overlooking the Carter spread, where he made camp among the rocks and began carving a small wooden eagle with hands that trembled only slightly in the morning light. 4 of Roderick Grayson, his best men, would never return to their leader, and every soul in Golden Valley knew that blood would demand blood before the sun set again. 5 days had passed since the morning at Dreaming Creek, and Ethan Rawlings had not spoken a single word to any living soul. His camp perched on a rocky outcropping above the Carter Valley like an eagle, this nest, commanding a view of every approach to the ranch house below. The wooden shavings at his feet told the story of sleepless nights spent carving and watching, always watching. Little Sammy Davis scrambled up the treacherous path, his bare feet finding purchase on stones that would have challenged a mountain goat. The boy carried a cloth-wrapped bundle that smelled of fresh biscuits and honey, along with a carefully rehearsed invitation from Martha Carter. "Mister, my ma says you are welcome at our table," Sammy announced breathlessly, settling down beside the silent stranger. "She reckons a man who saves folks ought not to eat alone under the stars every night." Ethan's hands never paused in their delicate work, but his eyes softened as they fell upon the child. Without a word, he reached into his saddlebags and withdrew a perfect wooden eagle, its wings spread wide as if caught in eternal flight. He pressed it into Sammy's small palm and nodded toward the ranch house. "For Miss Amelia," the boy whispered, understanding without words. The thunder of approaching hoofbeats shattered the peaceful afternoon. A dozen armed riders swept into Golden Valley, their leader wearing the silver star of a federal marshal. Marshal Stillman's voice carried up the canyon walls as he questioned the townspeople about the killings at Dreaming Creek. "Cold-blooded murder," Stillman declared, his pale eyes scanning the ridge where Ethan maintained his vigil. "This Rawlings character has a reputation for taking the law into his own hands." When the riders climbed toward the canyon camp, they found only scattered wood shavings and the cold ashes of a dead fire. Ethan and Sammy crouched among the rocks like shadows, waiting as the searchers cursed and threatened below. In the silence, a folded paper fluttered from Ethan's coat pocket. Sammy, his young eyes widened as he read the faded headline, "Tragedy at Willow Bend, Ranger, his family murdered." The date was 18 years past, and the accompanying photograph showed a younger Ethan Rawlings in the uniform of the Texas Rangers, standing proudly beside a beautiful woman and a small boy who would never grow to manhood. The night exploded into chaos as Roderick Grayson led his remaining men in a thunderous charge toward the Carter Ranch. The outlaw chief rode his black stallion like a demon from hell, his weathered face twisted with rage over the deaths of his best gunmen. Orange flames licked hungrily at the barn timbers, casting dancing shadows across the yard where the battle had already begun. Amelia Carter pressed her back against the rough wooden wall of the loft, her father's old Colt heavy in her trembling hands. Young Sammy crouched beside her, clutching his own rifle with the determination of a boy forced to become a man too soon. Below them, Joshua Carter, his voice boomed commands as he and his ranch hands fought desperately to hold their ground. "Stay down, both of you," Joshua shouted over the gunfire, but his daughter had inherited his stubborn streak along with his keen eye for shooting. Sheriff Baker rode into the melee with his deputy trailing behind, their badges glinting in the firelight. But instead of joining the fight against the outlaws, Baker reined in his horse and waited, his cowardly silence speaking louder than any words. The corrupt lawman had sold his soul to Grayson years ago, and tonight his betrayal would be written in blood and smoke. The barn roof collapsed with a thunderous crash, sending sparks spiraling into the star-filled sky like fallen angels. In that moment of distraction, Roderick Grayson spurred his horse toward the ranch house, his gun drawn and murder in his eyes. Ethan Rawlings materialized from the shadows like death itself, his presence commanding the attention of every man in the yard. For 18 years, he had remained silent, speaking only through actions and the deadly accuracy of his weapons. But now, as he faced the corrupt sheriff who had betrayed everything he once stood for, words finally came. "Drop that badge, Baker." Ethan, his voice cut through the night like a blade. "You are not worthy to wear it." The sheriff's hand moved toward his gun, but Amelia's rifle spoke first. The shot echoed across the valley as Roderick Grayson toppled from his saddle, his reign of terror ended by the courage of a rancher's daughter who refused to be a victim any longer. The acrid smoke of gunpowder hung heavy in the morning air as Ethan Rawlings knelt in the blood-soaked dust beside Sheriff Baker, this lifeless form. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he unpinned the tarnished badge from the corrupt lawman, his vest, the metal still warm from the heat of battle. The silver star bore stains that would never wash clean, much like the souls of those who had worn it dishonorably. Amelia Carter approached slowly, her calico dress torn and stained with soot, but her eyes burning with the fierce pride of a woman who had faced death and emerged victorious. In her gentle hands, she carried the wooden eagle that Ethan had carved during his silent vigil, its wings now bearing the scars of flying splinters from the gunfight. Without words, she placed the carved bird beside the blood-stained badge in the dust, a symbol of understanding between two souls who had found each other in the darkness of violence and loss. The eagle's wooden eyes seemed to watch over them both, a guardian spirit carved from the hands of a man who had forgotten how to hope. As the sun climbed higher, the people of Golden Valley emerged from their hiding places to tend the wounded and count their dead. Ethan worked alongside them in silence, his strong back bent to the grim task of digging graves for friend and foe alike. Even Roderick Grayson would receive a proper burial, for justice demanded respect for the dead regardless of their sins in life. Joshua Carter stood in the doorway of his damaged ranch house, holding a letter that bore the official seal of the Colorado Territory. The parchment crackled as he unfolded it, revealing the governor's appointment of one Ethan Rawlings as territorial marshal, complete with full legal authority to bring order to the lawless frontier. "The governor heard about what happened at Dreaming Creek," Joshua said, his voice carrying across the yard. "Seems he has been looking for a man with your particular qualifications." Amelia stepped forward, her chin raised with the same determination that had carried her through the darkest night of her life. "Papa, this valley needs a lawman who understands justice, not corruption. Mr. Rawlings has proven himself worthy of our trust." The wooden eagle caught the morning light as a gentle breeze stirred the dust around their feet, carrying with it the promise of better days ahead. The kitchen of the Carter Ranch house had become a sanctuary where truth could finally find its voice. Ethan Rawlings sat at the worn wooden table, his calloused hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since grown cold. The silence that had protected him for 18 years was breaking apart like ice in a spring thaw, and the words came slowly, painfully, like blood from an old wound. "Her name was Rosa," Ethan began, his voice barely above a whisper. "My wife, she had eyes the color of autumn leaves and a laugh that could chase away the darkest storm. Our boy Jake was only 7 years old when they took him from this world." Amelia Carter sat across from him, her own hands folded in her lap, listening with the patience of someone who understood that some stories could only be told once. Outside, the Colorado wind rattled the windows like the ghosts of memory seeking entrance. "I was tracking a gang of bank robbers through the high country when it happened," Ethan continued, his steel-gray eyes fixed on something far beyond the kitchen walls. 3 days I had been gone, following their trail through Devil's Canyon. Rosa and Jake were supposed to be safe in Willow Bend, protected by Sheriff Baker and his deputies. The name fell from his lips like a curse, and Amelia understood now why Ethan had spoken with such cold fury to the corrupt lawman during the battle. Baker's betrayal ran deeper than simple greed. It was written in the blood of innocence. Rosa had been paying Baker for extra protection while I was away on dangerous assignments. Ethan's voice cracked slightly. Not because she did not trust my abilities, but because she loved me enough to worry. She wanted to ensure that someone would watch over our home when duty called me away. The truth hit Ethan like a physical blow, 18 years of self-doubt and guilt crumbling in the face of this revelation. Rosa had not betrayed him or doubted his strength. She had simply loved him with the fierce protectiveness of a wife and mother. Baker sold that information to the very outlaws I was hunting, Ethan whispered. They knew exactly when to strike and how long they had before I would return. My family died because a corrupt lawman traded their lives for silver coins. The sound of approaching hoofbeats shattered the moment as Marshal Stillman's men surrounded the ranch house under cover of darkness, their weapons gleaming in the moonlight like the teeth of hunting wolves. Amelia Carter rode through the night like a fury unleashed, her horse's hooves striking sparks from the rocky trail as she raced toward Golden Valley. Behind her, the Carter Ranch lay under siege by Marshal Stillman's corrupt forces, but ahead waited the only hope for salvation. The good people of the valley who had already suffered too much under the boot of lawless men. The first light of dawn found her standing in the middle of Main Street, her voice carrying to every corner of the sleeping town as she called the citizens to arms. Friends and neighbors, the time has come to stand together or fall separately. Marshal Stillman and his hired guns mean to finish what the Grayson gang started. Doc McDonald emerged from his clinic first, his medical bag in one hand and his father's old army Colt in the other. I have patched up enough victims of corrupt lawmen, he declared, his usually gentle voice hardened with resolve. Today I choose to prevent wounds rather than heal them. Andy Morgan, the blacksmith, stepped from his forge with a rifle that gleamed like polished silver. His massive arms, strengthened by years of working iron, would serve justice as faithfully as they had served his craft. Even elderly Mrs. O'Connor hobbled from her boarding house carrying a shotgun that had belonged to her late husband. That young Carter girl has more backbone than most men twice her age, the old woman announced. If she can face down killers, then I reckon I can do my part too. One by one, the honest citizens of Golden Valley answered Amelia's call. Storekeepers, farmers, and working men who had lived in fear for too long finally found their courage in the face of a common enemy. They brought weapons, ammunition, and most importantly, the unshakable determination of people fighting for their homes and families. When Amelia led her volunteer army back toward the ranch, she found Ethan Rawlings transformed from a haunted wanderer into a natural commander. He moved among the defenders with quiet authority, positioning men and checking weapons with the practiced eye of someone who understood the brutal mathematics of warfare. How many? Ethan asked as Amelia dismounted beside him. Enough, she replied, her eyes meeting his with the steady confidence of a partner rather than a rescued victim. We fight together, or we do not fight at all. The improvised army of Golden Valley prepared for war, knowing they battled not just for survival, but for the future of their children and the soul of their community. The fortress that Roderick Grayson had carved into the red sandstone walls of Sand Canyon now served as Marshal Stillman's stronghold, its narrow passages and hidden chambers bristling with corrupt lawmen and hired killers. The morning sun cast long shadows across the canyon floor where two forces prepared for a battle that would determine the fate of the entire Colorado Territory. Amelia Carter led a small band of volunteers along the treacherous mountain paths that wound behind the canyon walls, her sure-footed horse picking its way through loose shale and hidden crevices. The route was known only to local hunters and miners, a secret that might prove the difference between victory and massacre in the hours ahead. Remember, we strike the rear guard when you hear Papa's signal, she whispered to the men following her, their faces grim with determination. No mercy for those who have shown none to innocent families. Below in the main canyon, Joshua Carter positioned his forces for a frontal assault designed to draw Stillman's attention away from his daughter's flanking maneuver. The rancher's weathered hands gripped his rifle with the steady confidence of a man who had fought Apache raiders and survived the harsh winters of the frontier. Amelia's knowledge of the abandoned mine shafts proved invaluable as her team moved through forgotten tunnels that honeycombed the canyon walls. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the faint gleam of their lanterns. But she navigated the passages with the instinct of someone born to this wild land. The battle erupted simultaneously on multiple fronts as the forces of justice struck like lightning from the storm-dark sky. Amelia's group emerged from the mining tunnels behind Stillman's sentries, their surprise attack throwing the corrupt Marshal's carefully planned defenses into chaos. In the heart of the canyon, Ethan Rawlings faced Marshal Stillman in single combat while gunfire echoed from the walls around them. The corrupt lawman, his pale eyes burned with madness as he realized his empire of fear was crumbling beneath the righteous fury of ordinary citizens who had finally found their courage. "Your precious Rosa begged for her life before she died," Stillman snarled, attempting to break Ethan's concentration with lies and cruelty. "She told Baker everything about your weaknesses, your fears, your—" The Marshal's words were cut short as Amelia appeared at the canyon's edge, her rifle trained on his heart, proving once again that truth and justice could triumph over corruption and deceit. Marshal Stillman's lies died on his lips as Ethan Rawlings stepped forward with the calm certainty of a man who had finally found peace with his past. The corrupt lawman, this desperate attempt to shatter his enemy, its resolve had failed, for truth was a stronger shield than any lie could penetrate. In that moment of clarity, 18 years of guilt and self-doubt fell away like chains broken by divine intervention. "Rosa never betrayed me," Ethan said quietly, his voice carrying across the canyon with the authority of absolute conviction. "She loved me enough to ensure our safety while I served the law. You twisted that love into a weapon, but it cannot cut me anymore." The final gunshot echoed through Sand Canyon like thunder rolling across the high country, and Marshal Stillman fell to his knees in the red dust. His reign of corruption ended by the justice he had perverted for so many years. The silver badge on his chest, once a symbol of honor, now bore the stain of his crimes against innocent people. Amelia Carter stood at the canyon's rim, her rifle still smoking in the morning air, as the remaining corrupt lawmen threw down their weapons in surrender. The sight of their leader's defeat had broken their will to fight, for mercenaries and cowards possessed no loyalty strong enough to face death for a lost cause. The honest citizens of Golden Valley and the surrounding ranches emerged from cover, their faces reflecting the profound relief of people who had witnessed the end of a long nightmare. Children who had learned to hide at the sound of hoofbeats could now play safely in their yards, and merchants could conduct business without paying tribute to outlaws and corrupt officials. A dust-covered rider appeared at the canyon's entrance, bearing an official dispatch from the territorial governor. The letter, sealed with red wax and adorned with the eagle of Colorado Territory, confirmed Ethan Rawlings' appointment as territorial marshal and granted him full authority to establish law and order throughout the region. "The governor has heard of your victory," the messenger announced, his voice filled with admiration. "Word of your courage has reached Denver, and honest lawmen throughout the territory are ready to serve under your command." As the sun climbed toward its zenith, the people of Golden Valley began the work of building a new future on the foundation of justice they had fought so hard to establish. The corruption that had poisoned the Colorado Territory for years was finally being cleansed by the combined efforts of ordinary citizens who had chosen courage over comfort. The morning sun painted the wooden walls of the new Marshal's office in Golden Valley with golden light as Amelia Carter pinned the deputy marshal's badge to her vest with steady hands. The silver star gleamed beside the carved wooden eagle that had become the symbol of their partnership, representing the transformation from victim to protector that defined their shared journey. Ethan Rawlings stood behind the desk that had once belonged to the corrupt Sheriff Baker, but the office bore no resemblance to its former incarnation. Maps of the territory covered the walls, marked with the locations of honest lawmen and the remaining pockets of outlaw activity that still required attention. The badge of honor rested in a place of prominence, a reminder of the price of justice. "The people need to see that law and order have returned," Ethan said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who had earned his position through sacrifice rather than politics. "They need to believe that their children can grow up in a world where right matters more than might." Noel Grayson, the younger brother of the fallen outlaw chief, stood before them with his hat in his hands and genuine remorse written across his weathered features. Unlike his brother Roderick, Noel had chosen redemption over revenge, surrendering peacefully to face justice for his crimes. "I know I cannot undo the harm my family caused," Noel said quietly, his eyes meeting Amelia's without flinching from the weight of his guilt. "But I want to try to make amends. if you will give me the chance. The transformation of Golden Valley had become visible to anyone who walked its streets. Families that had fled during the Reign of Terror were returning to rebuild their homes and businesses. The general store reopened with full shelves, no longer emptied by the tribute demanded by outlaws. Children played in the streets without fear, their laughter replacing the sound of gunfire that had echoed through the canyon for too many years. Martha Carter hung new curtains in the windows of the ranch house, their bright fabric a symbol of hope restored to a family that had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The barn, rebuilt with the help of neighbors who no longer feared to venture from their homes, stood as testimony to the community spirit that corruption had tried but failed to destroy. In the Marshal's office, a small framed photograph found its place beside the official documents of appointment from the territorial governor. Rosa Rawlings smiled from within the silver frame, her autumn-colored eyes watching over the man who had finally learned to forgive himself and the badge that would honor her memory through service to others. The autumn wind carried the sound of children's laughter across the valley where the Grayson stronghold had once stood as a monument to fear and corruption. In its place rose a sprawling wooden structure with wide porches and bright windows that welcomed the morning sun, a testament to the power of redemption over revenge. Rosa's Haven, as the townspeople had named it, served as home to the orphaned children whose families had fallen victim to the violence that had plagued the Colorado Territory for too many years. Amelia Carter Rawlings worked alongside her husband to ensure that these young souls would know safety and love in a world that had shown them too much cruelty. "Every child deserves the chance to carve their own future," Ethan said as he watched a group of boys learning to work with wood under Noel Grayson's patient instruction. The former outlaw had found his redemption in teaching others to create beauty from rough timber, his skilled hands guiding small fingers in the delicate art of carving wooden eagles. The eagles had become more than symbols. They were promises made manifest in wood and hope. Each child who came to Rosa's Haven received their own carved bird, a reminder that even broken wings could learn to soar again when given proper care and time to heal. Marshal Rawlings and Deputy Marshal Carter had brought peace to a territory that had known too much war. But their greatest victory was not measured in outlaws captured or corrupt officials brought to justice. It lived in the faces of children who slept without nightmares, in the sound of church bells that rang freely on Sunday mornings, and in the sight of families walking together down streets where fear no longer ruled. The wooden eagle that had begun this journey sat in a place of honor on the mantel of the great room at Rosa's Haven, its wings spread wide in eternal flight. Beside it rested a photograph of Rosa Rawlings and her son Jake, their memory preserved not in sorrow but in the joy of the children whose lives had been saved by the love that transcended death itself. Under the boundless Colorado sky, justice and mercy had triumphed over corruption and fear. The valley had found its peace at last, and the eagles carved from the wood of hope would carry that peace into the future for generations yet to come. In the end, love had proven stronger than vengeance, and healing had overcome the deepest wounds that violence could inflict upon the human heart.